Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull would bring...
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 38. I've taken my show back from Mort Todd to bring you a new season. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics.
Hi, I'm George Takei. You know me as Helmsman Sulu on Star Trek. When I'm not busy going Warp Factor 8, I like to beam down to Lee's Comics in Mountain View and spend a lazy afternoon reading comics classics from Marvel to DC, from Dark Horse to Fantagraphics, and everything in between. So please, spend some time here at Lee's Comics and spend your hard-earned cash.
The Fun Ideas Podcast is made possible by listeners like you and from Lee's Comics of California, selling you what your mother threw out since 1982, online at leescomics.com. Alvin, the story of Ross Bagdasarian Sr., Liberty Records, Format Films, and The Alvin Show is out. Order your hardback, paperback, and ebook copies today on Amazon and at bearmanormedia.com. I am currently still working on Friendly Ghosts, Little Devils, Giants, and Rich Kids, The Art and Creations of Warren Kremer, the Total Television Scrapbook, and the Monkees solo book, which now has a title called Headquartered. Soon, my earlier books will be available for the first time in hardback. I will let you know when you can purchase hardcover versions of created and produced by Total Television Productions, If You're Cracked, You're Happy, Volume 1 and 2, and Frozen in Ice in an upcoming episode. The Kickstarter for the comedy of Jack Davis and the comedy of John Severin was wildly successful, raising over $5,000 after a goal of $1,500. We will be shipping the books and other goodies soon. Our guest today is a singer, composer, and performer who has worked with such artists as the Monkees and with Joan Jett. He's also a member of the long-running musical group The Characters. He's a huge fan of Alvin and the Chipmunks, and he even wrote the foreword to my Chipmunks book. Here he is, Danny Solazzi. Okay, on the phone I have Danny Solazzi of The Characters. How are you, Danny? How are you today?
Good, Mark. How are you doing?
Fine. So, you were the one who wrote my introduction to my Alvin and the Chipmunks book, but you have a long, varied career in the music industry, so I guess we can go over that a little bit, talk about Chipmunks, talk about Monkees, other things.
Sure.
I guess the main question I have for you is, how did you get started and interested in music, and how did the Characters form?
Well, the way I first got started was in 1976. I went to see Paul McCartney and Wings at the Philadelphia Spectrum, and I was only 12, so at the time, I was basically reading comic books, Spider-Man and stuff like that, and I just listened to AM radio. Didn't really go out and buy a lot of records. Was buying 45s like, Tony Orlando and Dawn, Tie a Yellow Ribbon, and that kind of stuff. Not really, But when I went to see that concert, which was Wings Over America, it was like earth-shattering event. It was like, I had never been to a concert before, and I'm 12, and so for a 1976 concert, the production values for the Wings Over America tour were pretty advanced. There was from my memory, is there was bubbles coming out when he came out of the, to come out to do the first song, Venus and Mars Rock Show. There was like lasers. There was a big scrim that came down that had Magneto and Titanium Man on it, which blew my mind because I was reading comic books at the time. Mm-hmm. A projector came down and showed some footage from the Band on the Run photo shoot. It was just it was just unbelievable. And then, I was familiar with some of the songs because there was a lot of Beatles songs in there and McCartney hits, and then some of the stuff I obviously didn't know. But I remember I was behind the stage and I was looking down with binoculars at the people in the front row, and I was amazed. We were up in the blue section, the high section. I was amazed at the people in the front rows singing every word to every song. And I thought, I'm going to be like that one day. I'm going to know every word to all the songs. And then I also said, I want to do this also. I want to be up there. So the next day I went out on my bicycle and I bought Ram and Band on the Run, and rode it home on my bicycle, started listening to it, and just was knocked out by them. And then I bought the record store that I used to go to was a place called Melody Records in Union, New Jersey, and they had a poster on the wall because '76 was a big Beatle year because Paul was touring. Right. So they had a poster that had all of the album covers, all the Capitol Records stuff. So it had all the Beatle ones, and then it had a little section for each individual Beatle one. So I got it, I put it up in my room, and that was my Bible. In other words, whenever I got money, I'd be like, oh, yesterday and today, that looks like a good one. I'm going to get that one. And then the next thing, I'd be like, oh, I'd bounce around, and I'd be like, I got to get the one that has Maybe I'm Amazed on it. So I'll get that one. And so that was basically it. I was hooked. I mean, I was, it was just like all consuming, and I had a lot of catching up to do because, it was, a lot of records to buy. And then I found other people that were interested in it as well. And then it was always my intention. I went out and bought an Ovation acoustic guitar, just like Paul had, and, tried to learn how to play and, got somewhere down the road a little bit. And then when I got to be a little bit older, and when I was 19, I formed the Characters. And our approach was going to be that we were going to be like everybody. The funny thing about the Characters is we never fit into whatever was happening at the moment, and we still don't fit in. And we're just the Characters. That's what it is. So in other words, we were the Characters during grunge. We were the Characters during the glam rock thing. It just we wanted to be kind of like a combination of, let's say, the Beatles, the Monkees, Joan, Jett, and the Blackhearts, all that put into like four guys that were just kind of having fun, not taking themselves and their image too seriously. We weren't going to be like a progressive band that where you didn't know the guys' names that well, and they didn't really have like distinct personalities. We kind of wanted to be like we would have loved to have our own Saturday morning TV show, right? So it was that kind of a thing.
Now, have you had the same four guys the whole time, or is it band changes and stuff, member changes?
Well, we have been together for 38 years, which has got to be a record. Wow. But yeah. So what's happened in all that time is that we've had guys, the original guys. Some of the one guy was in for 15 years, another guy was in for 20. And one of the guys that currently is an original member. Was our guitar player, and now is back as our bass player because we need a bass player. And so I mean, it's like when Al Pacino says, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. So
now you've been in the group the whole time, I assume.
Yes, I have been.
Okay, so I guess in effect you're the leader, as it were? Is that how it goes? I mean, what?
Yeah, I would say the reluctant leader, but yeah, somebody's got to keep it together. But if I had my way and we had like a manager guy, I'd probably be rallying against that guy because but I have to be that guy, which I would rather not be that guy. But yeah, so you need somebody to keep it together, and that's the one thing is that that I've the one thing that I give us credit for is that we have kept it together. A lot of bands they just can't stay together, for whatever reason.
Okay. Well, you gave me some songs here. Let me play one here, and then we can talk a little bit more about the band and other things. So the first one you gave me is this one called "I Need You Tonight," and it's it appears to be like a pleasant mid-'60s sounding rocker. And did you write? You didn't give me any credit, so you got to tell me. Did you write this, or did other members of the band? Okay.
No, everything. I write all the stuff. So
okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and like I said, we just took our influences and it kind of just came out however it came out. In other words, like I said, the thing that we were very influenced by was well-crafted songs. So we weren't going to do like 7-minute instrumentals and things like that. It was more about, songs that, you could remember, had good hooks, had catchy melodies, things like that. That's the stuff we love. We just loved all that stuff, like the Beatles, the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, Simon and Garfunkel, Elton John, all that kind of stuff. Paul Simon, so our main, and the Monkees. I mean, the Monkees had great songs. So that was, we just wanted to write good songs that people would remember and sing along to.
Okay. And let's listen to it now, and then I'll come right back.
Okay.
It's just another Monday morning, another weekend just flew by.
And that was I Need You Tonight. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, the next song I see on here is like a more up-tempo song, and it was called I Just Want You. So for these type of songs that you sent me, is there any other inspiration besides sounding like 60s bands, or do you have any sort of, I guess, what's the best way to ask it besides that? Is there anything specifically you're trying to get with each song?
Well, we weren't trying to sound like a 60s band per se. It was just that it's if you go to a museum that has certain paintings in it, and then you go decide to do your own painting, you're going to be influenced by the ones that you saw. So we were equally as influenced by, let's say, like I said, Joan, Jett, and the Blackhearts, or Elvis Costello, as we were, the Kinks and the Beatles and stuff like that. So we just took from, in other words, I think a lot of the groups that we liked also pulled from the same sources that we liked. And then we also pulled from the generation before them, before the internet, and this is, in 1982, we were reading books and learning about Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and all that kind of stuff, because that's where the groups that we listened to got their influence from. So you had to actually search that stuff out, and then you find out, oh wow, Buddy Holly has really great songs. I mean, it's a self-contained unit, and so it was all about, to me, it was all about the songs.
Yeah.
If a group had good songs, I was in.
And you mentioned Joan Jett a couple times here, and I was looking kind of at your basic history online, and so you've worked with her a few times, haven't you?
Well, I actually worked for her for 10 years. I was the product manager over at Blackheart Records, and we would also open shows for Joan Jett. We were on Blackheart Records. Our debut album came out on Blackheart Records, and we were fortunate enough to have her sing harmony on a song called "Last of a Dying Breed," and so one of the things where she comes into the mix is. So now I've learned to play guitar, well enough to play in front of people, let's say. I don't know whether anything has changed since then, but when the band starts, I see Joan Jett at a place called the Fountain Casino when I'm like a senior in high school, and I had the Runaways album back in '76 because Cream magazine had said that they were going to be the next Beatles, and I was 12, so I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand what they meant by that. I thought, okay, this is going to sound like the Beatles. But what they actually meant was they were going to be as big as the Beatles.
Right.
So I brought the record home and I listened to it, and I liked it. I definitely liked it. And then when Joan Jett put her first solo album out, it was getting some airplay on WNEW New York, and I went to see her at a place called the Fountain Casino in Aberdeen, New Jersey, and there was she's got this unbelievable stage presence and this she's just so cool, and so I saw her and how she was doing her thing, and I thought, I like this, and I like the Beatles approach too, so maybe I'm going to marry these two things together, and that's kind of, what the early characters, and even today still, we kind of have that as some of our main influences. So it was a weird thing because I actually saw her and she was playing this white Gibson Melody Maker, and I had never seen that guitar before, and they actually did not make them in white. I later found out because I went around to all the used guitar shops and the one-head press. Like I said, it's hard for people to don't understand the pre-internet world. You couldn't go on the computer and Google Gibson Melody Maker. There was no computer. It was like you had to ask people that knew guitars. So I didn't know that you couldn't buy a white one. The story behind that guitar was that it was actually Eric Carmen from the Raspberries.
Oh, wow.
She was on tour in Cleveland with the Runaways, and somehow she found out that guitar was for sale, and she bought it. So I fell in love with that guitar. It was what I liked about it was that she was the only one I saw ever playing it, and I thought, okay, so I could play a Rickenbacker, or I could play a Strat or a Les Paul like everybody else, but I haven't seen many people play this guitar, and so I searched it out, and I found one that was stripped down to the wood, and I had it painted white, and I had all the cosmetics done so that the pickguard and everything would look like hers. And I never dreamed in a million years that I would ever even meet her, never mind be able to open up for her. So the first time we opened up for her, I was like, oh, man, this is embarrassing. I have your, custom guitar. I have the same guitar as you. Is this a problem? In other words, I could play a different guitar for tonight's show. And she was like, no, it's fine. I think she was flattered that somebody that was that influenced by her. So that was kind of an unexpected moment for me, that when we finally got to open for her, because how that happened was we had got asked to play this Monkees convention. Well, we had played this Monkees convention in Philadelphia in 1986.
Right.
The Monkees were getting played on MTV 3 times a day when MTV did the Pleasant Valley Weekend or whatever they called it, and then they started showing the show 3 times a day. Now, all these kids that either hadn't seen the show ever or just had heard of the show, whatever, the show was back on the air, and they were selling records like it was on. Rhino Records was reissuing the albums, certain albums that never even charted, like the Changes album, hadn't even charted in its original run, charted in '86 because it was because of the resurgence. So they had this Monkees convention in Philadelphia, and as a teenager, as a 16-year-old guy, I went to the second convention they had in Trenton, which was in a VFW hall with I don't know, maybe 60 people or something like that. But I was always a Monkees fan. I would watch the show, and I always thought to myself, man, that is such a cool way to do it. In other words, live in the same house and have all this fun, and you know what I mean, and just play music and make people happy. So they were a huge influence, and you couldn't find the records back at the time either. In other words, you could find a couple greatest hits, and you'd have to go to record shows to find stuff and whatnot. But when that all hit and Rhino put the thing out, we contacted the person that was doing the convention in Philadelphia, which no one expected this thing to be as big as it turned out to be, because it just kept growing and growing at just an unbelievable rate. So the thing sold out. There was like 1,400 kids at this hotel in Philadelphia, and they asked us to do it, and there was a couple other bands that tried out for it, but they picked us. I think the reason they picked us is because we had that spirit, and we were four young guys. We were like 22 at the time, and we kind of just, we got it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we kind of...
No, I get it, yeah. It's like... I was never into the music end, but, I forgot. Have you seen my Monkees book or no?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, all right.
But I'm going to get it now after this.
Okay. But, it was, briefly, my situation was always, I'm a few years younger than you, and it's like, to go back to what you said earlier about McCartney, I always was jealous that I didn't get to see Wings Over America, and you got to see it, because I had to wait till 1989 for McCartney to tour again. So it was a long wait. But on the Monkees, I never really cared for their TV show when I was a kid, strangely enough, but I started getting into the music, and I never thought in a million years they'd ever get together again. It just seemed like they were so different that and then when they finally did, like what you're talking about, it was like I got it too. I was like, wow, there's some chemistry there of some sort that if you get it, you get it. And so I was hooked like you did, but I was just seeing it as a fan and just absorbing the music. And then eventually I got into the TV show and everything like that. But so that's my take on it.
Yeah, so they asked us to do this thing, and it's how it's like in hindsight you think, oh, of course, but at the time we were kind of scared to death that people weren't going to accept what we were doing. I mean, our take on it was, and it's always been our take, even when we do our cover shows that we do, of other people's music, we never try to sound like the original artist, because it's just not I can't explain it, but we don't have that in us. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're not good enough to sound like the original artist, so we just sound like us.
Right.
I always look at it as like this: you're never gonna catch lightning in a bottle twice. In other words, you're never going to be able to record a version of Hey Jude that tops the Beatles. So, you know what I mean? Don't even try. So with us, we do the songs live, but we try to do them like how the best way that we can do them, whatever suits my voice or whatever suits our playing style. So when we did the Monkees convention, we were basically doing the songs as we would do them. So we weren't trying to, do a straight-on copy or whatever. I mean, we stayed faithful, but we didn't nitpick every little chord inversion and make sure that every little thing. We tried to just interpret it the best way we could. However the song sounded, the best way that we could do it is how we did it. So we weren't sure when we got up on that stage, and there was, like I said, there was 1,400 screaming kids in that room. We weren't sure they were going to hate us or love us, and they went berserk. It was like, I turned around and looked at the drummer, and we had been playing small clubs like the Dirt Club in Bloomfield, and little, maybe to 60 people or something like that, or maybe 200 at the most. And I turned around and looked at him. I said, "We're in concert."
Now, when you were doing those shows, were you just playing Monkees covers, or were you doing your own, like the couple songs we played, or different things, or what did you play?
So what happened was we did the first one, which we just did a set of Monkees songs.
Okay.
Then somebody at the convention saw us. This guy, you probably know who he is. He's well known in Monkee fandom. Gary Strobel.
I've heard of him. I don't know him personally, but
yeah, he's writing a book about the Monkees for the past like 20 years or something, and it's coming out soon. But he is a Monkee archivist. He's always helped out on the Rhino Records projects. He's just a a historian is the best way to categorize it. So anyway, he got a tape of a song called Marianne, and that's going to be key in when I get to the Joan Jett part of the story. But anyway, so this song called Marianne, he sends this tape to Rodney Bingenheimer, who is a disc jockey at the time on KROQ FM. Right now, he's a disc jockey on Little Steven's Underground Garage, and he still plays the characters. But so this tape of the song Marianne gets sent out there. They ask us to do the Monkees convention a month later in L.A., and so we said yeah. So then we find out, we get a call from the drummer's brother and says, I think they're playing you in Los Angeles. And I was like, he goes, you have a song called Marianne, right? We said, yeah.
Marianne, her skin is so tan. She got big brown eyes and long brown hair. And wherever she goes, all of the guys just stop and stare. When she walks by, I don't even try. I'm too afraid to even say hi. But I know this feeling won't go. It stays the same. So I call out your name. Marianne, Marianne doesn't know who I am. I'm not part of her scene. You know what I mean. I don't fit in her plans. Marianne, I'll do all that I can to prove it to you. You know that it's true, my Marianne. Now once I felt so empty inside, my loneliness I couldn't hide. But I don't feel that way no more. I have no doubts, baby, I'm sure. Marianne doesn't know who I am. I'm not part of her scene. You know what I mean. I don't fit in her plans. Marianne, well, I'll do all that I can. Oh, to prove it to you. You know that it's true, my Marianne. And now I don't need nobody else, as long as you're right there with me. But I know we really are just strangers. It's my imagination running away with me. Marianne doesn't know who I am. I'm not part of her scene. You know what I mean. I don't live in her plans. Marianne, I'll do all that I can to prove it to you. You know that it's true, my Marianne.
And we found out that Rodney was playing us on KROQ. So the next thing I know, he sets us up 3 days before we get to LA 3 days before we're supposed to play the Monkees convention. He puts us on a bill with a group called Dramarama, who had a big hit in LA called Anything Anything. And we get off the the plane, and 2 days later we're playing to a sold-out crowd at the Roxy on the Sunset Strip.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. Then we get to the Monkees convention, and at the Roxy we're doing our own songs. And then at the next Monkees convention, and everyone that came after that, which we did them in Detroit, Chicago, Tucson, Arizona, Tacoma, Washington, just all over the place. We did many conventions for 2 or 3, 4 years after that. We would always do a set of Monkees, and then just because I totally get where people's heads are at, if we said, look, this is a bonus set at the end of the night. In other words, we did our set of Monkees. If you want to stick around and hear our own stuff, you're welcome to do that. So we didn't mix them in, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay.
We didn't force it on anybody. and the kids would stay. And the weird part about that whole situation was, and again, I keep saying this, pre-internet, pre-cell phones, pre-all that stuff, is that we would travel to all these weird locations like Detroit or Chicago, or not weird, but I mean for us, places that a little New Jersey band wouldn't normally get to go without a record deal. And these kids would fly in from all over the place. I mean, people coming from Japan and Australia and all these other places, and they would see the band, and then they would disperse back to where they're from. And so we'd be getting letters from all over the country, even England, and wherever it was. So they started a fanzine for us, and so we would do. Four times a year, they would send out a fanzine that was kind of based on that Monkey Business fanzine. And then at the end of the year, we would do a Christmas cassette, which was kind of like, we got that idea from the Beatles Christmas Flexies. Yeah. And we would do our own thing, they were about 15 minutes long each, because at first we were going to do a Flexi disc, and it turned out it was too expensive and we couldn't get it out on time with a pressing plant. So we decided that we would do cassettes, and the good thing about the cassette was we could make them longer. We could make them 15 minutes long. So each one usually had 3 Christmas songs on it, plus a whole bunch of skits, which kind of were like all the weird stuff that happened to us during the year. If you did something to us that was like not nice, let's say, during the year, you wound up in one of our skits. So we did all that, and so we get out to LA, and Rodney's playing Marianne. And then I had sent the tape of Marianne to Black Art Records, because I thought I would love to be on that label, and I think Kenny Laguna, who's Joan Jett's manager, who was a bubblegum guy who played on like stuff like Green Tambourine and 1, 2, 3 Red Light, and Indian Giver and stuff like that. I figured he would get us, right? So we sent the tape to Blackheart. Blackheart called us back. They said they liked the tape and they wanted to have a meeting. And whenever I would call the office, he wasn't around or whatever it was, so I just thought, okay, maybe they're not that interested. So then, now we fast forward to, I guess, 1987 maybe? I think it was 1987. And Joan Jett is the in-studio guest of Rodney Bingenheimer's on KROQ, and they play Marianne. Rodney plays Marianne. And Kenny's flipping out over the song. He's like, God, this is a hit. I love this song. I tried to contact the kid. He never got back to me or whatever it was. And so we were living in LA at the time, and I went and had a meeting with Kenny. And I said, we're willing to move back to New York if you'll manage us. And that's what we did. And he gave us the opportunity. We were actually living in LA, and he said, if you want to open up for Joan Jett at the Joan Jett and the Blackhearts at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, and we took a plane back and opened up for them. We didn't even, in other words, whatever we made on the gig didn't even cover the flights, but we wanted to do it so bad that we actually flew back and did it, and then we came back, and I started working at the company, and we started doing shows with them. And as a matter of fact, one of the cool things that happened in our tenure at Blackheart was that Kenny was also managing the Kinks at the time. Yeah. And he got us an opening shot for the Kinks in Maine, which was unbelievable. And I used to drive Ray Davies around, so that was pretty weird.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. It was a weird feeling. Like Ray would say to me, "So what do you do in the group?" And I go, "Wait, this is not happening. This is like Mick Jagger coming up to me and asking me about my group." It was like it was very cool. I remember one time we went to a print shop, and he goes to me, "I've written a play," and he starts telling me, and I know it's Arthur. Of course, I love Arthur, the album. I told him, I said, yeah, Arthur, yeah, I know. And it was just like it was just unbelievable that so many of our heroes, our influences, we worked with, we got to do stuff with.
Wow.
I mean, we've had Mickey, Peter, and Davey multiple times on stage with us.
Right.
Opened for Joan, Jett 20 times. Opened for the Kinks. I mean, right there, those groups are in the top 5 for the characters.
Okay.
And we got to actually do stuff with them. So that was pretty unbelievable.
In all these situations, Monkees, Joan Jett, or even the Kinks, did you ever? You played on stage with them as well, or just opening act, or how did that work?
Okay, so with the Kinks, it was just we opened for them.
Okay.
Joan Jett, we opened for her, and she sang on our record. Kenny Laguna has been on stage with the characters many times. Jumped up. In fact, sometimes while we were opening for Joan, we'd bring Kenny up to do a song, because he was kind of like a brother in the. He loves the same kind of music we love. He's really. First of all, he knows everybody.
Okay.
I mean, he's worked with everybody. He knows everybody. He's got stories about everybody. But he's also he's just one of these guys that he just loves music, and you could just talk to him about, Beach Boy records or Rubber Soul or whatever it might be. And he's got a story about something, So anyway, so that was that. And then as far as the Monkees go, we started out by doing the conventions, and then what we would do is we would learn some songs. Like when Heart and Soul came out, we figured, okay, this is a brand new record, they're probably going to want to push it. We learned it, and we told them we learned it, and they did it with us. You know what I mean? They got up on stage. Peter and Mickey got up on stage with us. In other instances, Davey had done Hippie Hippie Shake as an Australian single, and we had learned it off of a Beatles bootleg from back in the early 80s, which we didn't even know where that stuff came from. It was BBC stuff, but we didn't know what it was. It was just on, these cheapo vinyl bootlegs that we got, and we were doing Hippie Hippie Shake in our set, and so I mentioned it to him, and he did it with us.
Hit the shake. Any key, doesn't matter. I've got the script. Okay, well tell me what the words are. Okay, right. Alright, got it, no problem. Alright then. For goodness sake. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. I'm not sure, but I think I've got to go now. And I hope to see you all there,
With Peter, out of all of them, we did the most work with Peter. We He played with us many times, as a band member, as just, alongside of us. And we would open shows for him with his Shoe Suede Blues, all over the place. Like we did one in California, we did a couple in California, and then we did some in Jersey, out in Long Island, just a bunch of stuff. So he was a kind of like a mentor. He would, I would call him up and I would ask him for advice, and sometimes if I was, frustrated or whatever it was, I would, kind of vent. And he, the thing that was interesting is that he would go from playing like the amphitheater with the Monkees to the next night doing a small little club with us somewhere.
Wow.
I mean, that shows you what a cool guy he was.
Yeah. Now, you gave me a couple different ones, and I was just wanting to know a little more information about him. The Hippie Hippie Shake you gave me, you said, was with Davy Jones. When was that recorded and where?
That was at the Hollywood Palace.
Oh, wow.
The TV show that everybody was on in the 60s, like Dean Martin and all that stuff?
Yeah.
The convention was held at the place. It was called the Hollywood Palace.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time that I was on the same stage as like the Rolling Stones and everybody else. And if you ever knew how many famous people were on that stage, your mind would be blown. It was just, that was a big show. But yeah, so he got up and that day he did Hippie Hippie Shake with us, and he did Every Step of the Way.
Okay.
The clip of Hippie Hippie Shake is been on YouTube for a long time, and it's like a, it's a well-known clip. Everybody, seems to know that one pretty well.
Right.
The other ones the other ones that you have is Heart and Soul with Peter and Mickey. That was at the Teaneck convention.
Okay.
And we had both of them on stage for that.
Thanks for coming down to our gig. We have a small technical break here while we tune up. Bars open and I get down and boogie.
there's Tulane, which was
that's one of
a
them.
Chuck Berry song, which was a weird thing. I don't even know how we got to that, but at the time, Joan had that on her Up Your Alley album, but it was right around the same time. I don't know why Peter and me settled on that one, but we did it, you know, many, many times together at different locations.
And gentlemen, I am sorry. That's the end of the questions. I do, however, have one more thing. I was going to get the characters up here and do a couple of tunes. Nice hand for the characters, ladies.
And then we did For Pete's Sake. and that's the ones that you have the recordings of.
Yeah,
But then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that.
And what was the time frame on these again? Those last two, roughly.
The Heart and Soul was, I believe, 1987 in August in Teaneck, and I think the other one was 87 or 88 in Chicago. The ones with Peter alone.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it could have been 87 in Chicago.
And did you work with them later on, or just during the 80s mainly?
No, Peter, we worked with, we just posted a clip of us with Peter at the Firehouse Pub in Rahway, New Jersey from 2005.
Oh, okay.
We did shows with him. We did some Valley something in Levittown or something. I forget what that was, but 2012, 2011. I couldn't remember the very last thing that we did with Peter, but it was a 20, 25, 30-year relationship.
Right. And, of course, both of them are gone now, Davey and Peter, which is sad, but it happens.
Yeah.
But did you ever have any, with any of the Monkees or any of the other people that we're talking about, just any private time, just, hanging out with them or anything like that, or is it always strictly professional? Or?
No, we did, me and Peter did a show one time where it was just me and him, acoustic thing, and then the next day the band came. And, we were working stuff out in the hotel room. I always have this little memory of Daydream Believer, because we were doing Daydream Believer, and I hit a major or a minor chord in the chorus. In one of the in the verse it's a major, and in the chorus it's a minor. I forget which one it was, but Peter pointed it out to me. He said to me, that's actually a major or a minor. I can't remember right now, but it was one of those. So when we do that and we have the whole crowd singing along, in my head, I'm always thinking of that moment right there.
Right.
I'm always thinking, this is when the guy who played on this record, told me, what the right chord was. It's like it's a weird feeling when you get the crowd to sing along to something.
Right.
You have that communal moment, and then you also have your own private moment of what that song might mean to you, or what memory it hits you with, because everybody else is having that same moment for whatever their memory of it.
Right. You mentioned Rodney on the Rock, and you sent me some different things, and I was a little bit confused about it. I don't know if I'm going to play them, but I listened to them. It's just various voices just saying their mostly positive comments about the characters and things like that. What's the genesis of that, and what was that about? Was that when you were just on the show with them with Joan, Jett, or whatever, or
it's one of two things. I'm not sure if you're referring to just the little band that we put on one of our records, which was Rodney talking about the band, and also people calling in. And then we also, there is a skit that we do that's called The Characters Visit Rodney that has been on a couple of Christmas compilation albums. Rodney loves this skit. He closes his Christmas show out every year with The Characters Visit Rodney. So what it was we were going to see him, and he thinks we're soliciting him to play our music, but he already knows who we are, so he lets us in, and he's like, the characters I was just listening to. So we asked him if he knows Santa Claus. We started asking him for presents, and you could ask Santa to get us this stuff for us, until finally we're all yelling at what we want, and it's almost like a Dave Seville and Chipmunks moment, where at the end he's like, silence, silence, I demand silence, and then the skit ends, So it didn't even dawn on me that probably the Chipmunks were the influence for that little skit, because it ends with us getting yelled at. So we had a song called "This Is Goodbye" that was on the Best of Rodney on the Rock that came out back in the day on Rhino Records, and Chip Douglas produced it. That's another little bit of the story. We flew out in 1987 to work with Chip Douglas to do. We did an album with him that we released years later. We actually remixed it and finally put it out because technology had improved, and we were able to. What it was is it's a little technical, but it was a 16-track, 2-inch tape, 16-track recording, and we couldn't find any place affordable to remix the record. And then when the digital world opened up, we were able to do it in a affordable studio, and so we put that record out called The Early Characters, which is actually an homage to the early Beatles records. So
So it wasn't just a coincidence that you called it that. Okay.
we stole the artwork. If you look at the album cover, it's the top of it is the exact lettering of the early Beatles with the same color scheme and everything, and you've got the little stereo thing and all that. And it doesn't say something like electrifying big beat performances by England, whatever. But it says something like unreleased recordings. But it's the same concept. In other words, it's stuff that was that we recorded, but maybe you haven't heard it, or it didn't come out. And so we recorded 10 songs with Chip Douglas back in 1987. And again, his track record is unbelievable. He produced the Turtles, Linda Ronstadt, the Monkees, and for the Monkees, the big hits were Pleasant Valley Sunday and Daydream Believer.
Right.
I mean, you can't ask for better production values than on those two songs. I mean, they're just off the charts the way that those records are produced. They're perfect. And so I thought, we sent him our stuff, he loved our stuff, and we flew out there and we did it.
Yeah, you might want to try that. Tell me. Well, I said, hey, whatever happened?
Was it a little intimidating, or are you just business as usual for you?
It was intimidating. It was a little intimidating, but we got used to it after a while. And then I went out there 10 years later and did some stuff with him. And then recently, I did some stuff remotely with him. He had this song called Today, which was originally intended for the Monkees, and I think they recorded it around the time of the Steam Engine sessions in '69. But for whatever reason, they never put a monkey vocal on it. And so we did a version of it, an unreleased version of it, in '97, I think. And then the Monkees were doing their Christmas record recently, and Andrew Sandoval had asked Chip Douglas to rewrite the song as a Christmas song. Mm-hmm. So he rewrote the lyrics. Andrew Sandoval is the guy that does all the tour stuff with the Monkees, and he writes all the liner notes, and he's an unbelievable historian as well.
Now him I know. I've met him a few times, and he's a really cool guy. So yes.
Yeah. So he asked Chip to rewrite the song as a Christmas song, and then Chip said to me, "Well, you have a high tenor voice. You want to do the demo?" I did the demo, but I guess we didn't get it in on time, so it didn't make it. So we put it on YouTube last year, and I don't know whether we'll press it or do something this year. We still have a couple months to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Oh, and now it's called Christmas Time, which is also very funny because we also recorded this past Christmas, which we only put it on YouTube, but we didn't get it out there. We recorded 3 Chipmunks.
Right. You sent me those. Since you keep alluding to the Chipmunks, let's talk about the Chipmunks. Why not? I assume your fascination with the Chipmunks started in childhood, like most of us, right?
Yeah. What happened was I wasn't even born yet, and people that lived a couple blocks over were friends of my parents, and the guy worked at Liberty Records.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he gave my parents 3 Chipmunks records for my sisters. I wasn't even born yet. It was Let's All Sing with the Chipmunks, Around the World with the Chipmunks, and The Alvin Show, and all of them had the foil covers. The first 2 had the cartoon, the actual chipmunk-looking chipmunk renderings.
Right, the ones we call the ones that'll give you rabies. That one, those.
Yeah, right. And so they gave him those records, and then when I came along, I inherited them, and I listened to them nonstop. I mean, I can do Mrs. Frumpington's story word for word. I fell in love with those records. I mean,
do you ever do that on stage? No.
No, I haven't done it on stage. But, maybe I'll start doing that. But yeah, I fell in love with those records. I mean, there was so much to love about them. I mean, I can't explain it, but the harmonies, even though they're sped up, they're beautiful. I mean, they just sound so good. I mean, the guy knew how to put a song together and knew how to put a record together.
Yeah.
And I also, it was believable. I mean, it just seemed like that stuff was happening. Like there was a guy yelling at somebody called Alvin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just seemed like, So I was always, that was like a huge influence, and just loved those records. And then as I got older, I started to seek out all the other stuff that he did, and I started to buy his, solo 45s that I could find, and his other records and all that, and we actually, so this year I just decided, there's these 3 songs that I always loved by them that I always felt like, the hit we just wanted to do just because it's to me, it's a great Christmas song. It's one of the best Christmas songs, Christmas Don't Be Late.
Right.
And then I really loved this song called Christmas Time, which was a variation on Greensleeves. It's the melody of Greensleeves, and I think maybe he wrote his own lyrics to it.
Yeah.
And then hang Up Your Stocking, which to me is like an unknown gem. It's just this great little song with a swing thing going on and horns and all that. So I thought, you know what? Nobody's ever heard these with real voices, so let's try it.
Yeah.
And we did it, and people loved it.
Christmas time is near. Time for toys and time for cheer. We've been good, but we can't last. Hurry Christmas, hurry fast. fire is warm and the spirit's bright. What a beautiful sight, it is Christmas. Raise up your voice and sing, fill the room with joy, let the rafters ring. Sing out with word and rhyme, it's a wonderful time, it is Christmas. The children gathered around the tree, how they look and wonder and laugh with glee. Their hearts are filled with 100 dreams, and they're counting the moments till Christmas. Raise up your voice and sing, fill the room with joy, let the rafters ring. Sing out with word and rhyme, it's a wonderful time, it is Christmas. Come sit you down and eat your fill. It's a time for happiness and goodwill. May all good thoughts and dreams come true, and we wish you all Merry Christmas. Raise up your voice and sing, fill the room with joy, let the rafters ring. Sing out with word and rhyme, it's a wonderful time, it is Christmas. Once a year in the middle of December, Santa Claus comes around with gifts and things all the kiddies will remember, pleasing everyone in town. He'll bounce and bump, he's so doggone plump as he goes his merry way. He shouts and sings for the joy he brings. If you listen, you'll hear him say, hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking on Christmas Eve, 'cause Santa's on his way. So boys and girls, here's something to remember, 52 weeks of the year. If you're not good and if you're not tender, Santa's sure to hear. Get ready for bed, he'll be coming soon with his sleigh and reindeer too. And just before you settle down, you better be sure that you hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking on Christmas Eve, 'cause Santa's on his way. Hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking, hang up your stocking on Christmas Eve, 'cause Santa's on his way.
I was always curious about that. There are other versions, but I think you nailed it, because it's just people kind of do a straight rendition kind of as a joke, but you kind of nailed it as like, no, this is a legit record, this is a legit song, let's just do it straight, and do it at a normal voice rate, not sped up. And it's just kind of funny that Christmas Don't Be Late has never become just like a regular perennial, like, you know, any other song, like Chestnuts Roasting on the Open Fire or whatever. You know, it's like, just because the Chipmunks kind of taints it somehow, I guess. I don't know, because a song is a song, I would think. Yeah.
It's a great melody. It's a great melody.
Right. And you know, even on that, if you just listen to the orchestrations, you know, I found out, and you'll know when you read the book, you know, it's like a lot of those songs were performed by that infamous Wrecking Crew down in L.A., and it's like, it's just amazing instrumentation to me, you know. It's like, because Ross Bagdasarian himself, he wasn't really, you know, he didn't really play instruments. I mean, he might have played the piano a little bit, but, you know, he left it to the professionals to really, you know, and he just basically sung his melodies into the tape recorder. That was his recording device, you know.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really interesting about those records is they are so well recorded. I mean, you know, if you take out the fact that it's three high-pitched chipmunks singing and listen just to the backing track,
yeah.
Not only is it played phenomenally well, but it's whoever the engineers were and whoever was, you know, doing the production work on it, it's just as good as any other record that's out there. As far as, you know.
Well, I believe Ted Keefe was the engineer on most of those records, which of course is the namesake for Theodore. So, because he was the Liberty recording engineer for the most part, and I think I think he did everybody's record over at Liberty, not just Ross Bagdasarian's records. It was just, he was the engineer, and that's what he did. So, yeah. And but you know, they all have that kind of similar sound. I mean, if you listen to other groups on the label like Martin Denny and stuff like that, you know, they got that same kind of sound going, and even the backing for, you know, something is maybe considered different, like Jan and Dean or anything like that. You know, they still have that kind of same sound because, yeah, they use the Wrecking Crew and they use the same engineering and the same studios and the same everything. So,
yeah, I really like that Martin Denny stuff.
Right. And so yeah, it's all kind of the same vintage, you know, the 50s and 60s, where, you know, everything was kind of independent and everything had this sound to it. You know, now, you know, it's just like everything else. Everybody's owned by the Universal Music conglomerate, and, you know, it's like, it's all, you know, with the what's that called? The where they synthesize the voices. I can't even think.
Yeah.
You know.
Auto tune.
Yeah. And it's like.
The thing is, everybody's got these pro tools that make everything sound like, you know. In other words, you could play something horribly through a horrible amp, and then they push a button and it sounds like a great Marshall amp at Madison Square Garden or something. So, in other words, you don't get the individual sound of any room or any. In other words, because everybody's pulling from the same pool. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense, because of the electronic sampling and stuff, whatever they use these days, many records sound very similar. Whereas in the old days, you know, I love the Kinks, but the Kinks, or I love the Stones, but the Stones records do not, in my opinion, and I love the Stones, it's not the songs I'm talking about, the way they were recorded. George Martin knew how to record the Beatles, and the Stones records don't really have as the fidelity is not the same as the Beatles.
You're referring to the ones they recorded in the 60s mainly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The early stuff.
Right. Because I think by the time Jimmy Miller got in there, they started improving. You're talking about the Andrew Loog Oldham stuff.
Yeah,
which
that's what I'm talking
sometimes I wonder how professional he was. He was just kind of there and, you know, plugged in a mic and, all right, go. You know, it's like...
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, of course, Jimmy Miller, great. You know, and the early stuff is great too. But I just think that the clarity on a Beatles record is, they would have benefited from if George Martin would have done their stuff.
Right. I get it, yeah. And, of course, you know, now with Giles Martin remastering everything, it sounds even better, you know, so, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can do now, right?
I do hope they eventually go back to the earlier albums. I know that, the anniversary thing, they have to do Abbey Road and everything, but I hope they kind of go around the pike, and if they can, start at the beginning, Please Please Me and everything, so I see what they can do.
even the ones that are out now,
yeah.
For me, when I listen to something off with the Beatles, sometimes I feel like the amp is in the room with me. It's so clear.
Right.
It's like, it's so well recorded.
Yeah.
They had the best microphones. They had the best equipment. It was the '60s, but that was the top. In other words, you couldn't get any better than that.
Well, I think George Martin, this is just my opinion, I don't know, but I think, and I've seen the documentary on George Martin, so it kind of establishes this, the fact that he worked so long on things like the Goons and other British comedy and other stuff that really wasn't rock and roll, gave George Martin the ability to understand space and timing and just the overall picture, if you will, of the sound picture, where if he was just a straight rock and roll guy, it might not have been so, like what you're talking about, so full and like you're in the room and present.
Right. He had a huge palette to draw from. In other words, he had a long, many years of experience doing many different things that he actually brought into working with them.
Right.
They benefited from the Goons and from all the other stuff that George had done previously.
Right. And of course, since they were fans of Peter Sellers and everything, they encouraged it. They said, "Oh, make our record sound like this." Okay, sure.
Yeah, and this is a funny thing that I say when I talk to people about like when if you're a young group and I say, well we used to hear the Beatles saying that they didn't know how to read music, so we thought, oh well, we're not going to bother to learn because the Beatles didn't. But we don't have George Martin. So, what I mean? So, in other words, George Martin was able to interpret a lot of this stuff. And, in other words, I don't think John and Paul could have written the score for Eleanor Rigby.
No.
You know what I mean? So, in other words, they were so fortunate that they had somebody that talented with them that could interpret their ideas. And it's just everything possible that could have lined up right for those guys. It was just sheer magic. In other words, they were in the right place at the right time. The four of them together was just unbelievable magic.
Yeah.
George Martin being their producer, and Brian Epstein being their manager.
Right.
And the time frame that they came out, it was just like this cosmic thing that was meant to be, and that's why we're talking about it 55 years later.
Right. And it is fortunate for them that somebody like a George Martin didn't hog the spotlight. Like we mentioned Andrew Loog Oldham, he kind of did in a certain respect, and he wasn't very good. But George Martin, he said, "Oh, this Yesterday song might sound nice with some strings. I'll compose something for that." But he didn't say, "George Martin presents with strings Yesterday." He just kind of was like, produced by George Martin. Very small and subtle, And we never knew, we just said, "Oh, there's strings on this." Not knowing that, it's not like Paul sitting there, "All right, boys, let's do this." It's like it leads me to believe to another question, kind of going back a bit. It's like we're talking about the Chipmunks and these newer recordings. So, how do you record nowadays, and do you try to keep these type of things we're talking about in mind?
I try to. Whenever we can. I like everybody to be in the same room for the initial basic track.
Okay.
It drives some of the guys that we work with a little crazy because it's harder to control. But that's, I don't mind mistakes. I don't mind a flat note here or there. In other words, it's like, I don't love a flat note, but I'm just saying, in other words, I can tolerate some stuff because the music breathes.
Right.
They do stuff where they can slide sections in, this chorus in to the second chorus, and it's like, well, that kind of just, it takes away from the whole, uniqueness of any kind of, all right, so you listen to certain songs, like let's say the Mamas and Papas, when they do I Saw Her Again Last Night. At one point, he comes in the wrong spot, and they left him.
That's true.
And you know, John Lennon, he never double-tracked himself. You know, well, I shouldn't say he never, but many times when he was double-tracking himself, he didn't even say the same word.
Right.
He might say, now you got a boyfriend, now you got a guy down the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know.
And of course, now they consider that, that was a mistake. You shouldn't have that, and so they keep that out of the canon, you know, as it were, unless they put out a mono edition or something like that. And it's like, just put it out. Come on, you know.
Yeah.
I saw a thing recently on YouTube where somebody was, I believe it was I'm Looking Through You, and they're deeply criticizing, you know, Ringo's drum beats are different here than they were in the previous verse, and it's like, I don't know if they were really trying to sound so mechanical. I mean, it's like, I think they would play by feel, you know, that, hey, this feels right, let's do it. Not sit there, we forgot a drum beat on this one note. Well, we better go back and re-record it or lay over another track or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if people enjoy the music, the song, whatever it is, you got it. In other words, you nailed it. You did your job.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, but like I said, however you get to that is, you know, as long as you get to it. Because I look at it like this with music in general. It's like, you know, there's only good music and bad music. You know what I mean? There's only two categories. It's really good and bad. And so, you know, if I hear something that comes out today and it's good, I'll like it. You know, it doesn't have to come from my era. You know, like I said, I have recordings of ours that I feel like we nailed it, and then on a couple of them I go, you know what, we just, and I'm sure every artist feels that way.
Yeah.
You know, you don't knock it out of the park every single time. You do the best you can. Sometimes with time constraints, you don't have the opportunity to spend as much time as something because, like you know, I'll give you an example. We got asked to do a song for a Monkees compilation called "Listen to the Bands," and so I think I had pneumonia for 2 weeks before the deadline. So we went in and we recorded like more than we needed to, and we made the deadline. But it was the kind of thing that if I had a little more time, maybe I would have done things a little differently, maybe not. But they wound up picking two of our songs, so that was, you know, so that was good. But I'm just saying, it's that kind of thing. And I've heard John Lennon say it in interviews where, you know, he would change things on his recordings if he could. You know, at some point, you have to put the paintbrush down and just go, you know.
Well, I know what that's like when writing my books, you know, and sometimes I cringe and mistakes get out. I will just leave it at that, you know, but it's like, at least it came out. You know, I can't sit there and be a perfectionist, and I can always correct it in future and stuff like that just to kind of tidy it up. But in general, you know, it's like there does come a time on any creative project where you just kind of say, all right, enough, let's do it. Here it is.
Yeah. I understand.
I have, you know, a lot of weird questions, so they're kind of random, but they're all about the characters. So how many albums have you recorded over the years, or how many songs have you recorded over the years? You know?
Oh, well, we have the one that's called The Characters, which is on Blackheart Records.
Yeah.
I think that's got 13 on there. And then we've got the Early Characters, which was kind of like, it had the 10 Chip Douglas songs and then various demos and live things, and that's why we even threw the little Rodney thing in there. We had space on it only came out on a CD, so we knew we had 72 minutes on a CD, and we were going to fill up 72 minutes. So, you know, at one point there's even a character's hotline message just to show how wacky we were back in the day. Like we would, like I said, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-all that, you'd have to call our answering machine to find out where we were playing. It was like, hi everybody, this weekend we're at whatever it was. And then, you know, as time went on, those would turn into skits too. We would do skits on the answering machine. I know, it was nuts, but I mean, people loved it. And so we have the Early Characters, the one called The Characters, and we're working on a new one that's got some stuff that, you know, that we've had sitting around that we never finished, and because recording is more affordable these days, you know, we hope to have something out in the next couple of months that we're working on now. every once in a while you'll see us post something on Facebook, a song. I actually put one up today that was a song called September Never Came, which is about Marilyn Monroe, but I left it ambiguous in the lyrics so you wouldn't know. You'd have to listen to the song and then decide yourself if you could figure it out. The first time I put it up, I didn't tell who it was about. I asked people to guess, and most people, either they said the wrong person, or some people said Marilyn Monroe. But anyway, so we are working on stuff. It's just a matter of I have not figured out the digital world yet, as far as getting Alexa to play the stuff and getting on the iTunes and all that. We were talking to Blackheart Records about putting our catalog out. That may or may not happen. I'm not sure, but we will get out there in the next month or two and have our catalog out there for people to just say, Alexa, play the characters. Right now, if you tell her to play the characters, she just plays the Rodney skit. So
okay.
It's kind of weird. Because it's on a Christmas compilation that they uploaded.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so weird today about music. I mean, I hate to say it, well, it just is what I do. It's like I still like albums or CDs or whatever, and I like the packaging and everything, and it's like, yeah, I can listen to Sirius, and I can listen to Spotify, and I can listen. But to me, it's like listening to the radio in the old days. It's like I don't really own it, and it's like I want it on something, and it's like it's weird that people don't think that way anymore. It's like, oh, it's all streaming. This is great, and it's like, okay. So, do you struggle with that as a performer, or anything else? Because when I buy Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, and I get to open up the album and see the gatefold painting and see the booklets with the lyrics, and I get to open up the White Album, and I get a poster, and I get 4 pictures of the band and whatever it might be, and I get to read who played what on every track and who wrote what. Yeah, I'm from that school. Yeah.
So I also have been thinking about, putting the character stuff on vinyl and putting the, and all that. And I'm just concerned that I'm going to do it and then I'll have 800 copies sitting in my garage because, I'm just being honest because, I would love for the people that if I knew there was enough people out there that would love to have a vinyl copy, I would do it in a second. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, I don't need a garage full of characters records.
Right. I don't blame you. Yeah. But as far as recording, how often do you record then? If you're not really putting out records, or you just put out videos, or what do you do?
Well, we've been trying to get this record out. We even have a name for it. I'm not even going to give it away yet, but we're trying to get this. We have enough songs for another record and then some. And it's just a matter of getting everybody together. And like I said, we've recorded some stuff, and I was like, God, we didn't nail this one, so I don't want to put it out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's that kind of thing. It's like so it's weird. I mean, I don't know if you ever listen to some of the anthology stuff, and you go, oh, this is a great song, but they didn't get it on this one. You know what I mean? In other words, you could see why they didn't put this one out.
Right.
It wasn't there yet. So we really just want to wait until we get definitive versions of them. Mm-hmm. And we might let them slip out one at a time through Alexa or whatever it might be, and then put the whole thing out on a vinyl thing, depending on what kind of interest we get.
Right.
We're definitely going to do something.
I mean, there's no set amount, but I'm just curious on your songs, how many takes do you usually do?
Well, the problem is,
that might be a loaded question, but anyway.
Yeah, we can do up to 5 or 6 or 7 takes, but you you have to listen to 5 or 6 or 7 of them over and over again. You know what I mean? You go,
right.
You know what, this one starts out good, but I don't like this part here. It's almost better if you limit it to like 2 or 3, because then you can focus. When you start getting into take 6 or 7, after a while you don't even know what you're hearing anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, we've got, that's what we did with our, we recorded about, just recently, we recorded about 6 tunes, and some of them had multiple takes, and then after a while I was just like, I can't listen to it anymore because I don't know what I'm listening to anymore. So we might go in and redo them again, just because now we've all had a chance to listen to them and say, oh, you know what, I could have done that better. This is how we want to end it. You know what? I've heard Keith Richards say this. Sometimes what will happen is you record a song and it comes out, and 2 years later you're playing it and you find some little thing that you wish you would have put in while you're doing it live. You go, oh, this lick was great. Why didn't I put this one in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think the most amazing one in their catalog that just sprang to mind is "Start Me Up." Is that they tried it like 2 or 3 separate times as a reggae tune and it just wasn't happening. And then one day he just played this Keith Richards, and one day he just played the da da da, like everybody knows, and it's like, that's it, let's not do it as a reggae song, so.
Yep. Yeah, and that was around since 5 years before it came out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they tried it for Some Girls, and they tried it for Emotional Rescue. It wasn't happening. So.
Yeah, we had a song that we recorded with Chip Douglas called Miss America, and it was a slow ballad, and it was good. I mean, it's out. It's on the early characters. And we were rehearsing one day in the basement, and I was frustrated about something, so I started it as an up-tempo rocker in a different key, and we were like, wow. And so we recorded it, and it came out on the debut album as a rocker.
Okay.
So if you want, you can play the two and let people decide which one they like better.
Okay.
Because it's that kind of a thing. You know what I mean? It's there's so that's the problem. There's so many variables. You can change the tempo. You can change the feel. You could change the key. You might have 2 different sets of lyrics that you like. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of it drives you nuts a little bit. You're never sure if you made the right choice.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. One comes to mind also is "Help Me Rhonda" by Beach Boys, and I think it was the Endless Summer compilation that they put the album version, not the single version, and where it fades out and fades in and all sorts of weird stuff, and it's like, it just didn't work. It's like the single version is the preferred version or definitive version, and it's like, but someone at Capitol, at least on the LP version, put the album version instead of the single version on that compilation originally, and it's like, the first time I heard it, it's like, what's this? Because I didn't have all the Beach Boys albums, I just heard the single tracks, and I thought the record was broken or something, when it was fading in and out. And then years later, when they put out all the CDs, oh yeah, they did 2 versions of it. Oh, okay. So.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's weird about stuff that you didn't know about is when I used to hear "She's a Woman" and "I Feel Fine," I used to think, why is there so much reverb on it?
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. And then when Past Masters came out and I heard the British version, I was like, this makes much more sense to me. It sounds crisp and clear. The other one sounded like it was just drenched in just this, like it was like, did they record this in a cave? What's going on here?
Right. Well, it's kind of funny. I initially started buying the earlier albums on the U.S. versions, and then somewhere along the line, I became a Beatle fan in the late 70s, and somewhere along the line they put out that big blue box that had all the British albums all in one box, and my mom gave it to me for a Christmas present, so I said, well, I'm going to play these instead. So I got used to the real versions, not knowing this is the real versions, because they had more tracks on the album and everything like that, and I said, well, why play these other ones? And then, it wasn't until years later when they put out the Capitol CDs, I go, wow, there is a lot of echo and reverb on these things. I didn't realize that, but I understand why they did it. It's kind of a silly reason, but it's like I think it's Bruce Spizer's book that talks about it in detail, and it makes sense. They were trying to target the American market at the time,
Right. Everything makes sense when it's happening at the time, and then when you look back on it, you go, oh, that might not have been the right thing to do. Spizer's books are really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I will say this, and you may think otherwise, but it's like you go through the British albums, you go through the American albums, and I still prefer the American Rubber Soul over the British one, even though that's not what they wanted to do. Because
I think a lot of people do.
And for some reason, for me, I don't know about you, is I think "Drive My Car" is totally wrong for that album. It's like, and it's probably because I heard it on Yesterday and Today first, and then and then I got the British Rubber Soul, and I said, what's it doing on here? Okay, but so I always preferred the American Rubber Soul, and then the other one that I prefer is kind of meet the Beatles over with the Beatles just because they put the single hit. But I get it. They weren't doing that in England at the time, putting the single hits on the albums typically. But,
I know, well, I mean, the thing that just blows my mind is that, they've got songs like She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand and Hey Jude, and they're not on any of their albums.
right.
You know what I mean? And I'm going to myself, what, are you kidding me? That would be my lead-off song.
Right.
I would be like, to put, like, could you imagine how much better the White Album would be with Hey Jude on it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they did that with Elvis, too. It's like, you get some Elvis album that he made, like, during the early 60s before he did all the movie soundtracks. And it's like, where's the hits? There's no hits on here. And you have to get Elvis's Golden Records Volume 12 or whatever, to get all the hits on something. And it's like, huh? And I didn't get that. Single really was a separate entity at one point, and that kind of went away later on, but,
Yep.
And then now it's kind of back because people don't make albums anymore. They do like YouTube. You record a track with a video or whatever and put it on YouTube. I don't know. So it's like,
yeah, I hear you.
All goes around, So I don't know. Let's see what we talked about. A lot of things. Actually, there's a few things I wanted to ask you about. This I have to ask you about, and I wrote it down like 3 times to make sure I asked you about it. What was the circumstance? You were the one that asked Ringo about the I've got blisters on my fingers on his VH1 video special. How'd that come about?
I was working for Joan Jett at the time, and they said they're shooting storytellers over, I heard they were shooting storytellers over, on the other side of town. And so I said, could you get me in? And they said, yeah. And so I got in, and when it came time for, he said, does anybody want to ask a question? And I don't know why, nobody was raising their hand. I guess they were intimidated or something. So he, I stand up and I asked a question. I didn't know what I was going to ask. You know what I mean? I was like trying to think of, something to ask. And I don't know. This is something that I wish that, like, the Beatles. I sent it into the Beatles Sirius channel in their little thing that they do. Their Wednesday night they do that. Fab Forum. But I always didn't know if it was Ringo or John who said I've got blisters on my fingers, and so when I had the chance, I asked him, and he said it was him, and I'm just curious if that cleared it up for everybody, or if everybody always knew who it was.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I thought this is my truth. I mean, I always thought it was Ringo. Then, in 1980, they put out the Beatles Rarities album, and on the first pressings of it, it says it's John, and I said, oh, I guess I'm wrong. And then they corrected it later, but I didn't know that, so I thought it was John for the longest time. And then, when I heard the Ringo thing in your question, and I didn't know it was you, like I said, I found out later, oh, this is the same guy, that Ringo cleared it up. And so now I know it's Ringo for sure because he said so out of his own mouth. But I think still people are confused because, like I said, the Rarities album came out accidentally saying John, and some people just think it's John, and, so...
Yeah, I didn't even know I was on the record. A friend of mine called me up and he goes, "You're on the new Ringo record." I'm
yes,
like, I'm what? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, yeah, don't ask me why, but out of all the questions, they only picked your question.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I got to get to the store.
Yeah. Well, definitely on the album, because I think on the tape of the performance, I think there's a few more questions. But yeah. On the CD, you're the only one who made it on there. And they gave you name credit, which I found amazing. They could have just said, anonymous questioner asked this, and that's why I was like, I have to ask this. And I meant to ask you, just when we're chit-chatting about Chipmunks and Monkees and everything. And I said, no, I'll wait till the podcast. So you give me a live answer here.
I didn't even realize my name's on the CD. I don't see that. Really? I got to check that out. I didn't see that.
Couple other questions. So you... obviously we're talking about working with Joan, Jett, and everything, but here's a few other people you worked with. It says on something, I think it was like your little bio, you opened for Gilbert Gottfried. Did you work with him, or was it a situation where you're opening?
That was just a one-off. We just did a gig with him. Yeah, it was the interesting thing about that one was that Stuttering John from Howard Stern's show was at that gig too, and got up and did a song with us, a Stones song. But yeah, Gilbert did his thing, and Cousin Brucey was there, and it was just it was just like a weird thing. Yeah.
Okay. And then did you play or just with Ray Manzarek of the Doors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Ray Manzarek got up and did Roadhouse Blues and Light My Fire with us. We would do these celebrity signing things, like conventions, like a smaller version of Comic-Con all over the place.
Right.
And they would have these guests, and they said Ray Manzarek is going to be there, but he's not going to play with you guys. So we didn't learn any Doors songs. And then he said, he starts playing, and he looks at us like, come up, and we're like, come up? What do you mean, come up? And so we start Roadhouse Blues in the wrong key.
Whoops.
And we started in A because we ask him, we go, what key is it? And Larry, our bass player, goes, I think it's A. And then Ray goes, yeah, it's A. We started in A, and I'm going, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is not the right key. And halfway through, we realized it's E, and we switch over to E, it was fine. It's fine. But so we did Light My Fire with him and Roadhouse Blues, and he was really cool. It was really, very gracious. Was into it. I mean, it was really weird playing Light My Fire with him and watching him get into that zone that he gets into during the solo.
Right.
So that was a moment. That was definitely a moment.
Then this is more, I knew you did the different TV-related conventions. So I think you played with Barry Williams or the Brady Bunch or some or most of them, or how did that work?
No, we did one of those things. We were doing the Monkees conventions, and this girl, Jody, who was running the Monkees conventions, decided to do a Brady Bunch convention. And so, there's not really a lot of Brady Bunch songs. I mean, there is, but we didn't know them. So what we did was we just did our 70s act, which is like, songs like Kung Fu Fighting and, and Build Me Up Buttercup, things like that. We just did our party set for the people.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if he came up or not. I don't think he came up, but
okay.
I don't. But we did a Brady Bunch convention. That's what that was.
Okay. And just as an aside, since you mentioned that, I mean, in your sets, a typical set, are you like let's say Flo and Eddie of the Turtles, that you could play probably anything from any era, or you have to kind of learn it, or what?
Well, we obviously have to learn stuff, but we basically do stuff that we grew up on.
Oh, okay.
That's the kind of stuff that we pull from. So in other words, there's always a lot of Beatles, a lot of Stones, a lot of, or just a lot of the 60s stuff that we like. Like, in other words, we'll do Black is Black by Los Bravos, or Photograph by Ringo, or, Eleanor by the Turtles. Just,
Okay, so you have a pretty extensive repertoire to draw from, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one other one I wrote down, and there might be more if you want to bring them up, but the other one was Ron Dante of the Archies. Did you play with him?
Yeah, we did. Actually, we did a thing called Rock Con in 2010, and at that gig there was Mary Wilson from the Supremes. Played with us. Hilton Valentine played with us. Phil Fang Volk from Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to think. Andy Kim did a couple songs with us. Ron Dante did some stuff with us. Vince Martell's from Vanilla Fudge. I got to keep thinking. A couple of guys. John Ford from Straubs was at that thing. Carlos. What's Bowie's guitar player? Carlos
Alomar?
Carlos Alomar played my Melody Maker and played some songs with us. Kazim Sultan from the Blackhearts in Utopia, he did a couple songs with us.
Wow.
Len Burtnick, a Jersey guy. There was a lot of people at that thing. I mean, we played with a lot of people throughout our career. Boyce and Hart, that was a different one of the Monkees conventions. We actually backed up Boyce and Hart.
Oh, wow.
We've had Julie Newmar from Batman on stage with us. We've had twice Julie Newmar was on stage with us. We had Harry Nielsen in the studio with us while we were doing This Could Be the Night, which was
oh, wow.
Rodney's theme song that we re-recorded with Henry Diltz, the famous rock photographer, and he was also part of the MFQ. And he also took the back album cover for one of our albums. And he was in the band with Chip Douglas. Trying to think who else. We opened for Three Dog Night. We opened for Mickey Dolenz solo. Just trying to think who else. I'm leaving out people, but But we definitely have played with a lot of people, and like sometimes it was crazy people, weird people like that you wouldn't expect. Like Michael J. Pollard got up and did Me and Bobby McGee with us one time. Karen Lynn Gorney got up and did Let It Be with us.
Oh wow!
The girls, the Landis sisters, is that their names? One was on Vegas and one was
Julie Landers, Audrey Landers. Judy, I said.
Not the one that was on Vegas, the other one. She got up and did Me and Bobby McGee with us.
Okay, Audrey's the other one.
Audrey, Audrey, yeah. I'm trying to think who else, but I mean,
wow.
Just a lot of. If I should make a list because it's interesting stuff.
Wow. I'm impressed. So, I hope the listeners are too. Is there anything else you want to plug or anything? We're probably running out of time here.
Yeah, okay, so if you want to learn more about us, we're thecharacters.net.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you find us. And that's about it. And I had a blast, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening, and thank you again, Danny Solazzi, for being my special guest. Episode number 39 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. You can become a Patreon of Fun Ideas Productions, and if everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, it would be a tremendous help. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Our opening and closing themes are provided by Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb. If you'd like to know more information about his music, please drop me a line. This has been the Fun Ideas Podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2019 Fun Ideas Productions. And thank you very much, and have a good night.
Lace to rhinestone kisses on those blind eyelids and drive with your velour chauffeur across the river Styx. Popping creation pills in the pink electric church. The final flicker of your illusion.